Oh, good morning, everybody. Boy, lots of people jumping on early. Um, so this week we've been working on a Crochet Bolero, and which is basically just a scarf that have the ends stitched together like a sleeve. So it ends up being like a sort of a sweater. This goes across your back, and then your arms go in the sleeves, of course. And that's what we've been working on. I was hoping to have both sleeves done by today so I could show you how you can do something decorative with the back of it. But I don't, but I did get the one sleeve to the length that I want it to be. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to make that sleeve flared and finish that sleeve. And then tomorrow when I come back, we can I'll finish the whole tutorial. For those that are just joining me, I do about an hour, hour and a half. I teach basic principles and how you can use those basic principles into pretty much anything. Like all the fancy, neat, pretty things that you guys see. I teach you how to just use those basic stitches to put them together to use simple, basic shapes so that you can elaborate on them and learn how to do a ton of things with them, actually. Sorry. I do this every morning. Every morning I jump on around 9:45, 10 o'clock, something like that. And every week I try to do a different tutorial. One week we did basic amigurumi, and I did just the basic doll. For some reason this is being goofy. Um, I don't know why this is being goofy. Somebody else mentioned it this morning on their lives that their comments and their people that joined were jumping around. Um, so I hope it's not affecting your experience. But one of the weeks that we did a basic amigurumi doll, and then we took that same doll and I showed you how you can make that doll from worsted weight yarn using blanket yarn into something a little bit different. Good morning, everybody that's joining. Thanks for the likes. This pattern is on my website. There's a link to my website on my link tree in my bio, and it's just a plain basic like portfolio page with some patterns on it. And then we took the same basic amigurumi doll, and I showed you how you can modify the pattern just with a couple of rows and add pretty much the same thing you added for the cow to make it a giraffe. I did a bunny too, but I gave the bunny away. That was my grandson's gift. And then I do believe one of the weeks I did basic puppets, because puppets are pretty much the same as amigurumi, only you're not stuffing them. So the two puppets that I have that I did tutorials on were a rounded nose puppet. I don't know if I did the whole tutorial on that one. And a pointed nose puppet. But the basic sock puppet patterns are also on my website. And this was the pointed nose puppet we did. And I did this as one of my tutorials on my YouTube channel. If you go to the playlist Nifty Knots Talk, in the mornings when I teach, I upload them all to YouTube when I'm done so that you can go back. And in the first part of the shark puppet, I showed you how we just did the entire puppet. And I do believe the second part of the tutorial, I showed you how I crochet the three-dimensional teeth and how I used short rows to shape the fins and how you can adapt that technique. Thank you, everybody that's joining me. Again, those tutorials can be found on my YouTube channel. My link is in my bio. The other puppet we did was a round nose puppet. So I have two puppet patterns and a basic amigurumi pattern on my website. And they are free. I do have the pieces for the cow and the giraffe. I think the bunny ears as well, which you could also take and just adapt to the puppets. But the other puppet is a round nose puppet. And this is what I made out of the round nose puppet. And it's basically the same thing. And that puppet, the round nose puppet, is also on my website. It shows like where you would make the color changes if you wanted to make a cow or a goat. And again, it's just the basic puppet. I do think I did in one of the tutorials how I made the mane for the unicorn. And like the pointed nose puppet would be good for like a mouse, fox, things like that, which I've done before. The mouse, I would just put a little pink nose on and just make big round ears, put some whiskers on them and some eyes. So we did a lot of like toy making and things like that. The other thing I did is how to make your motifs pop on your granny squares. So the example was the skulls. And I'm just going to chatter away and let you know a little bit about me. Thank you for the follow. Until some other people join in here. But the making motifs pop on granny squares was how you can make your motifs kind of pop out so they have a crisp edge. And this is actually part of the granny square. It's not stitched on. I have another one here that's not lined. I should have them. This was the bunny. That was another tutorial I did for making granny motifs pop on granny squares. And you can see that's not stitched on. That is actually, these bags are waiting to be lined so I can show you the backs. That is actually part of the square. So those are also tutorials that are up on my YouTube channel if you want to watch them. Good morning, everybody that's joining. Good morning, good morning. So that's a little bit of what you can find on my YouTube channel. If you want to go back, good morning, Janie. If you want to go back and rewatch some of those tutorials that I do in the mornings, they are all uploaded to YouTube. Sometimes the words just fly out of my brain. But today we are working on the Bolero, and I actually wanted to just go grab a different shirt so I can show you a little bit better, because this doesn't slide over my sleeves very well. So if you give me 1 second here, I can change my shirt. And the colors and the shape of that Bolero. Back to making the Bolero. Now I should be able to slide it on and off a little bit better and a little bit easier. Alrighty. So, if you didn't see parts 1 and part 2, Bolero is basically a scarf with sleeves. So, pull up my loops there because I'm going to work on the other sleeve. I'm working on the other side. And with this one, it's just a basic treble stitch, and I'll show you that. Chain 2, skip 2, and another treble stitch. Really simple. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me. And the Bolero is just basically a scarf. This starts in the middle of your back. The yellow line there would be the middle of my back, where I start the middle of the back. And then you could either then stitch up the ends of it, or you could start working in the round so that, let me move you back here so you can see it a little bit better. So that when you put it on, all my ends are still there. So that when you put it on, this flat part would go across your back. You're basically making sleeves. So the flat part would go across your back, and then the arms come down, and that's why they call it like a shrug, because you just kind of shrug your shoulders into it. And then if you look at the back of it, the back of it's like a half sweater, and there's no part to the front of it. So you see like the entire front part of your outfit, and then you have like the meshy decorative sleeves. Also in some of the tutorials I did the past couple days, and they are uploaded on YouTube, I went over how you could alter the stitch to make it bigger, to make the mesh bigger, or to make the mesh smaller. Thank you. Thank you very much, Janie. And how you could start working it in the round instead of just doing it where you would. Sorry, my stitch marker got a little bit twisted there. How you could start working it in the round instead of having to stitch up the ends, because this particular yarn, you can see, has a nice stripe to it, and if I stitched it, I would have a solid color stitch going down. So instead I worked those in the round so that you really couldn't see. I mean, you can still kind of tell where the seam is, but where I started it. Oh, hey there, Buckeye girl. You might be near me. What part of Ohio? If you don't mind me asking. Just in general. I am northeast up by the Great Lakes. Thank you very much. So today, like I said, if you go back through my okay. If you go back through my tutorials, you'll see how we started it, how I showed you how you can measure it, and how we got this far. That was Mondays and Wednesdays. I missed Tuesday because I had an appointment. And today I got to the point, I think I'm to the point where, make sure here, if this is my center, I should put a pin there so I can, so if this is my center and my arms come down to about here, I'm going to start flaring out the arms because I want my arms flared. So that's what I'm going to do with it. But I will show you that if you wanted to just make cuffs to make it like a sweat, more of a sweater, there's a couple of things you could do. The first thing that you would do if you wanted to make cuffs on it is that you would take all of these stitches. So you have a chain 2 and you have a treble and a chain 2 and a treble. So you would do 2 single crochets and a single crochet in here. So you would finish off the round first if you wanted to make a cuff. So I'm going to show you cuffs first, and then I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do mine. So I would do just the 2 stitches, just so you have the same amount of stitches all the way around. So 2 stitches in the chain 2 and 1 stitch in the treble, 2 stitches in the chain 2, 1 stitch in the treble, and you just work that way around, all the way around. There are a couple different ways you could do cuffs. You can actually just do some decreases. After you've done a few rows, you could just do a few decreases. You can make your cuff separate, and my yarn's getting stuck. You can make your cuff separate and stitch it on at this point, or you can do like a vertical row cuff in the back loops only, and I can sort of show you that. I mean, that's probably another whole tutorial, but I'm going to just do half this sleeve since I'm going to pull this part out. So if you just wanted to leave the sleeve the way it was, you can just finish it off with a row of just single crochet just to go around. If you wanted to make it, if you wanted to finish it off and make it a little bit fancy, I'm going to turn, but you would work in the round, and you want to make it a little bit fancier, you could do something like 2 single crochets and a single crochet chain 3 picot. 2 single crochets, and a chain 3 picot, however you want to pronounce it. And I'll show you that after I get another couple done here, or another one done here. And then you would end up with just your straight sleeve without a cuff, but with like a decorative edge. And all I did was start with 1 round of single crochet, even amount of stitches, and then when I went around the second time, I did like I alternated a couple of single crochets and then a single crochet with a chain 3 picot, and then you would end up with an edge that looked like that. So that's one way you could finish the sleeve on this. Another way you could finish the sleeve on this is after you've done your row of single crochet. I know I tend to look like this because I have to look through my bifocals to actually read, which is a pain in the, but anyway. So after you've finished your entire row of, oh, good morning. We are so far. Let me think. Claudia. Did I get it right? So far, he got his peanut butter, he's got his bone. He went to go hang out. Once he realizes that it's nice outside. Yeah. I try to. There's some of you guys that jump on here all the time that like really make my mornings and make my evenings. Once he realizes that it's nice outside, thank you for the likes. He will like go into like gargoyle mode where he doesn't want to come in the house. He just wants to lay there like the Sphinx on the stoop, and then like every once in a while just bark at something that moves. Just look around and bark at something that moves. So I call him a gargoyle at that point. Okay, so anyway, you know how I'll chatter away and I'll get nothing accomplished. So I'm finishing off the sleeve for those of you that are just jumping in. So this was our mesh, and this is the end of our sleeve. And as you can see, it's a pretty decent sleeve. So it's not too baggy. I could leave it just like that if I wanted to. So I was showing different ways that you could finish it off and just make it a little bit decorative. Good morning, Trudy. And so now I'm going to show you how that if you wanted to put a cuff on it, you can do a couple of things actually to put a cuff on it. You could pick up your stitches with knitting needles if you knit, and you could knit like a ribbon cuff on it, or you could do like a back loop single crochet cuff. So to do a back loop single crochet cuff, you would start chaining. And I'm just going to show you briefly with just a few stitches. You would start chaining for as long as you wanted your cuff to be. So if you only wanted your cuff to be short, you could make it short. If you wanted your cuff to be longer, you could make this chain longer. And then what you're going to do is you're going to single crochet back down that chain. And these are just examples of how you could finish this cuff. You're going to single crochet back down that chain till you get to the very bottom where your single crochets are. So now this is the single crochet that you started your chain on. The next single crochet you want to start your next chain on, or your next row on. So you would slip stitch into the next single crochet. You would turn your work, and then you would just go into, at that point, this would be the back loop. So I'm looking at it this way. So the top loop would actually be the front loop, and you would look at the back loop, and you would go in through those back loops. So you would skip your single crochet, you would go in through your back loop, and you would work your way back up. So again, this will be up on YouTube. Chain 1 to turn, And you're always going to work through the back loop. Always, always when you do this particular one. So now I'm going to work back down the chain, or back down it's now a row of single crochet. So I'm going to work back down that row of single crochet in my back loops. And when I get back to my primary chain here, or my primary set of single crochets here, you can see where I joined it here and made the chain, or made the first row of single crochets, but then I came down and I did another row of single crochets. So you have to compensate for it. So that set of single crochets that we worked down will then be a slip stitch in the following stitch. So if I can pull this apart a little bit, so you can see where I slip stitched to go up. So now we came down and we need to slip stitch one for the down row. So I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to slip stitch it for my down row. You can do it through the whole stitch, you can do it through part of the stitch, but I'm just creating a slip stitch for my down row. So you can kind of see how it's starting to get a rib. I'll do it again. Now, to go back up, you want to go back up from the next stitch. So you're going to go slip stitch, work up, work down, slip stitch. Slip stitch, work up, work down, slip stitch in the next one. Slip stitch in the next one to work up, work down, slip stitch in the next one, slip stitch in the next one to work up, then work down, and slip stitch in the next one. Does that make sense? If I explain it a little bit. So I'm going to slip stitch in this one and then turn my work and go back up. And you don't chain one when you turn your work to go back up. You only chain one to turn when you turn to come back down, and you always work in your back loops. So it gives you that ribbing effect. So now I'm going to work back up. So you're really doing 2 slip stitches. And then I'm going to chain my 1 and turn, and I'm going to work back down the same number of stitches in my back loops only. So you can see I'm working in my back loops. To you, they look like front, but for me that's my back loop. And I think I did 6, 5, 6. So now that I work down, I have to slip stitch to close that set, and then I'm going to slip stitch to start my next set. So I'm going to slip stitch in the next one to work my way up again. And you can see how that starts to create your ribbing. So I'm going to turn, and I'm not going to chain 1, and I'm going to do my 6 stitches back up. I just want you to kind of get it. I'll do a few rows so you can get a good idea of how I did it. And again, you can always go back to my YouTube channel for that explanation. When I get to the top, I'm going to chain 1. And when I get to the bottom, I'm going to slip stitch. I'm always working in the back loops of my single crochet for my cuff. So this is how you would do a vertical cuff on a horizontal sleeve. And you can use this principle towards anything, and it is, again, just a single crochet and a slip stitch. You're just working in the back loops only, and then when you get down here, you're going to slip stitch, and you finished that set. So one set is going to be up and down. So you finish that set, and you can see it starts to come together like ribbing, like a cuff. So to start the next set, you would slip stitch in the next one, turn, working in your back loops only, and you don't chain because that slip stitch counts pretty much as your chain. When like you get to the top, you chain 1. When you get to the bottom, you slip stitch, and then you slip stitch to start again. So I've worked my way to the top, I'm going to chain 1, I'm going to turn my work. So this is my sleeve, and I'm working this way all the way around. So you would just keep doing your rows in the opposite direction, and when you come down you slip stitch. And you could do this from either way. You can do this from the back side, or you can do it from the front side. I'm actually doing this from the back side. I had started it so it looks a little bit different. But that's how you would just make like a regular cuff, and you would work those sets of 2 rows until you got all the way around. And you will notice that because you use your back loops only, it pulls it together almost like a ribbing. I could do a whole set on how to do ribbing to make a cuff. Like if you wanted to do a little bit easier ribbing for a cuff, oh, this yarn is a pain to pull out. If you wanted to do a little bit easier ribbing for the cuff, you could just do front and back post stitches. This is what we're going to do with that little thread that's holding things back here. And this is for me, so I'm not worried about it coming apart. There we go. Somebody told me that if you stick your fuzzy yarn in the freezer overnight, if you need to frog it, that it comes apart much easier. I've never tried that. I'm just going to try to break the fuzzies. I don't know how well I'm going to be able to break the fuzzies. And again, this piece is just for me. This was just something I wanted to make for myself because my sister bought me the yarn, and oh my god, this is going to make me crazy. I don't typically buy fuzzy yarn, and this is the reason why, because I will pull a lot of things out just to experiment with them, to see what I can do with it and what I can make out of it. So unless I absolutely know what I want to make, I do not buy fuzzy yarn. Okay. So the other thing you can do to do a cuff for this would be, and yes, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do half a row. In the winter, I have stuff in my car. Oh, really? Huh. I am going to have to try that then. But for now, I'm going to torture myself and do another row and show you front post and back post double crochet, how you can do a cuff that way, and then rip that out again so that I can show you how I'm going to flute this sleeve to make it the way I want it. So I'll just do a couple of them. So front post and back post double crochets to give you a ribbing effect for the edge of your sweater. Hopefully I can crochet loose enough that I can pull it out a little bit easier. So first you would start with just a row of your double crochets. So you would just double crochet all the way around. You would chain 2 for your height, or if you're doing it in the round, you would then slip stitch and chain 2. And then the front post back post method is you're going to instead of working into your stitch, you're going to work around the post. So you can see how there's a post there. So you're going to alternate. The first stitch you're going to take either front or back. It doesn't matter how you alternate, but you're going to loop your hook around the stitch and do your stitch that way. Okay, so you've done that stitch. You can see how it pulls it towards the back because you wrapped it from the back. The second one, you're going to yarn over like a double crochet, and instead of putting it in the stitch, you're going to put it around the stitch from the front. So you're going to go around the stitch, around the post from the front. My camera won't focus. So you're going to yarn over like you would your double crochet, but you're going to go, can't get a good, around, in through the front, around through the back of that post, and then you're going to pull up your double crochet. And then the next one, you would go in through the back and around the post. So in through the back, around the post, and then do your double crochet that way. Oh, this is going to be a mess trying to take this out, I can tell right now. In through the back. So you're just going, you're not going through the stitch, you're going around the stitch. And then the next one you would go in through the front and around the post and pull it up. And the next one you would go, so that was the stitch you just did, so the next stitch you would go in through the back and you would pull it up. And the next one you would go in through the front and around the post and pull it up. The next one you would go in through the back and around the post and pull it up. And you would, and you can see how it kind of starts to make a ribbing effect. So that's another way that you can make a ribbing effect. I don't know if this yarn does the stitches justice, but that's another way you could do that ribbing effect. And then when you do the second row, you would just do the same thing. The posts that are towards the front, you would work the same way, front post, and the posts that are in the back, you would work the same way in the back post, so you would get that consistent like ribbing effect. I don't know how well you can see it. You would, that's a little bit better. You would get that consistent ribbing effect from working in the post stitches, and because you worked around the stitch, it will actually pull the cuff a little bit closer together as well. So that's another way that you could finish the cuff and the sleeve of this Bolero if you really wanted cuffs on them. I don't really want a cuff on mine yet. I want to take mine. Wait, I might have to take a sip of tea. Come out a little bit better. Okay, so I'm actually going to take out the first row of single crochet that we did as well. So those were, I did all those to show you examples of how you could finish that. And again, like I said, I upload all these videos to YouTube. So if there was one particular method that you saw that you wanted to rewatch and look again, by later on this afternoon, depending on how long YouTube and TikTok takes to process the videos, usually by 3 or 4 o'clock I have this video uploaded to YouTube so that you could then go through and stop and just watch the one part that you wanted to watch, which is why I'm not too worried about like being hyper focused on just one thing. So those are different ways that you could do those stitches if you just wanted to take that just like it is and put a cuff on it. What I want to do is I want to make these fluted. So what do I mean by fluted? Flared. I want them to come out just a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And I just want the flutes. So I do believe the sweater, the sleeve is about this long on my wrist. And I just want to do maybe 2 rows so that it doesn't really hang over my hand, but it gives it like a little bit of a different shape. So to do that, that's actually a little bit easier. I'm going to count my stitches, because we all know crochet is way too much math. So basically I'm going to count my stitches and divide them into 4 and mark 4 even stitches where I want to increase. That's how I'm going to do that. And it's simpler than it sounds. I'm going to show you before I lose my voice. So I have, I'm going to count this as my first stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, I have 19 stitches. Okay. I have 19 stitches. That's not going to divide into 4 very easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it and fold it in half. And I'm going to count this stitch as the stitch that I'm going to start fluting or start increasing to make that flute. Good morning. You are, let's see, Cindy. Good morning. If you wanted to go back and watch, I had just finished up showing you how to put different types of cuffs on it if you wanted to leave the end of your sleeve like this. I'm always happy when I get it right. I try. So since I have an odd number of stitches, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just kind of has to look even. So I'm going to take this as my first stitch that I'm going to increase. And you see I got like a stitch that just kind of happened to be on the very end. So I'm going to put a marker in that one. And that's going to be a stitch that I increase. So I have 2 stitches so far that I'm going to increase. And just kind of like fudge it, I'm going to take those 2 stitches and fold them so that they fold together. And I'm just kind of going to guess, like, of course I'm going to have a loop here because I have an odd number of stitches, and a loop here because I have an odd number of stitches. So I'm just going to take and do maybe the stitch before the loop. I'll do the stitch before the loop. The stitch before the loop. You can see here I don't have a post on the end, I have a loop on the end, but I'm going to take the post before it, and that kind of marks them even. So even though it's a little bit off, and I don't have a stitch marker for here because this is my kind of stitch marker. So even though it's not like perfectly even, if you look at where I put the stitch markers, it's kind of like even enough to give me an increase of 4 around that. Is the pattern available? This pattern, I may actually do it, but to be honest with you, this is something that's easier to make if you're customizable. And I do the tutorials if you go to my YouTube channel. I started it and showed you how to measure on Monday, and then Wednesday I came back and showed you how to put the sleeves together, and I'll get to a simple explanation here in a minute. And then today I'm showing you how you can finish the sleeves and do the other side of it. But it's a bolero, so it's a simple shrug. And basically what you do is you would, and you can use any stitch you want, but like I said, you can go back and watch those tutorials. You would measure around the fattest part of your arm, and that's how many stitches you would chain to begin. And I like to start in the center, so like this yellow part is in the center, and this would be my back. And then all you do is you just, with that number of chains from the fattest part of your arm, you just make a scarf. And the length of the scarf would be from your wrist to your wrist, because what you're going to do is you're going to take that scarf and you're going to stitch up the ends of it to make a sleeve, so that when you put your scarf around your neck, it is actually stitched up at the end, that you wear the ends like ends of your scarf like sleeves. So I kind of showed you how to start that and which stitches I used. I also went through how you can do different stitches to make the meshing a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. But yeah, if you go to, also linked in the bio, yep, my YouTube, thank you very much, Cindy, I appreciate that. But yeah, my Nifty Knots is also linked in my bio, so for my YouTube, so you can go right to that YouTube channel, and I do have descriptions of what we did for that day, and yeah, part one for the Bolero, and I just, yeah, I start with the chain. Once a week I try to do a project. Thank you. Once a week I try to do a project from start to finish and show you how, like, it's the basic stitches. Also, what am I using? I'm using yarn that my sister gave me. I would not necessarily pick this yarn out, but I kind of liked it, so I decided I would just kind of roll with it. It's really fuzzy, and it's kind of driving me crazy, but it's so pretty. It is Lion Brand's Landscapes, and the colorway is Boardwalk Promenade. I know you're looking at it backwards, so I'll leave it there for a few seconds. So Boardwalk Promenade, and it's Lion Brand Landscapes. I thought the same thing. I thought, oh my God, this is so pretty. I had surgery earlier this year, and my sister sent me a care package, and this yarn was in that care package. So I thought, you know, when somebody gifts me yarn like that, I try to make something for myself. I might not use all the yarn to make something for myself, but I'll at least try to use some of it so that they can see that I used it for myself, and not just, although my sister doesn't care. My sister was probably hoping I would make something that she could buy off my vendor table, because she's like that. She won't let me just give her things. She has to buy them. Thank you very much. I like them too. I had knit one a long time ago, and since it's basically a scarf, and you can start in the middle, I know some of you guys have already heard this, but you can start in the middle. You can use any stitch you want. So if you were using a directional stitch, you would start in the middle to make sure you went one way and then the other way, and the stitches were going kind of uniform on both ways down towards your hands. The one that I did, I had actually knit, and the knit was almost like a cabled butterfly. So I did the back piece of it, and I started in the center, and I did like the butterflies down the sleeves, and then the butterflies down the sleeves. I would have to dig it out. I know, she's sweet. We got into this like cash match last year for some reason. She insisted on buying something off of I knew she wanted it, and she wouldn't take it unless I took her money. So I said, fine, I will take your money, take the wrap. I know you like it, because I make shawls that are lacy enough that you can wrap. So she wears them with a triangle in the front and then pulls the tails down to hang, so it's like a cowl. And she wears them all the time in the winter. So I knew she liked it, knew she wanted it, and I said, fine, I'll take your cash, you take the wrap. You insist on paying me for it, whatever. And so about maybe a month later, I found a piece of blue glass that she liked, and it was a really unique piece. So I spent the money and I bought it and I sent it to her. And I said, well, that's what you get for insisting on spending money and buying something that I made that you could have had, that I would have made for you. So I can't remember what she sent me after that, but she sent me something after that. And I was like, you know what, really? So then for her birthday, I sent her a Fitbit. We just like kept passing this $200 back along. So for her birthday, I sent her a Fitbit. And then when I opened my shop, she went and spent the same damn money that I spent on the Fitbit to buy something out of my shop. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm done. We can't just keep passing this like $200 back and forth to each other. It's got to stop somewhere. And this year we're both totally broke, so who knows? But we didn't do Christmas this year, or I would have just told her no, and I would have just wrapped it up and given it to her for Christmas. But anyway, it's my chatter. So if you guys like join me in the evenings, that's what I do. It's funny and neat. Yeah, it was. It was actually pretty fun. It was pretty fun last summer. Okay, so back to the tutorial, because I can sit here and I can like chatter away all night. Some of you guys know that. I want to make the sleeves a little bit fluted, flared. So I am going to start with my first stitch, and it's going to be really simple. And since my first stitches have been a chain 4, and then a chain 2, so you see I have my chain 4, my chain 2, and then my treble in my treble. What I'm going to do to increase is I'm going to do my treble, so I'm going to count my chain 4 as my treble. I'm going to chain 2 to count as my chain 2, and then I'm going to do another treble in that treble. So it gives me sort of like a V-stitch. It increases that box by 1. And then I'm going to continue around with my chain 2 and treble in my treble, chain 2, treble in my treble. Whoops, I did that one as a double. I mean, I could have also increased this by 3, but I don't know, 4 seemed like an even number because that would be like on the top and both sides. Or you could just increase it at the bottoms. I mean, it's totally up to how you want to design it. So treble my next treble, and I'm there at my stitch marker, so I know that that's the next stitch that I'm going to increase. So I'm going to chain 2 and I'm going to treble into it. And then to make my increase, I'm going to chain 2 and put my second treble right into that. So that's my second increase. So there's my first increase. There's my first increase. That's my second increase. And I'm going to just go around and chain 2 and treble till I get to my next increase. Till I get to my next stitch marker and do my next increase. It's probably the only time you hear me quiet is when I'm actually sitting and doing something. String everywhere, pieces of string everywhere. One more. And I'm now to the next marked stitch. See where I have that stitch marked? So that's going to be my next increase, and it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to do my chain 2 to start my box, and see where it's fuzzy, where I cut it out from the cuff. I'm going to have to try the freezer method. And to increase that, I'm just going to do another chain 2 and put another treble in the same one. And I have my third increase. And then I'm going to work around to my next stitch marker and do my fourth increase. So I'm just going to do my chain 2 and treble in my treble. Again, if you look back through my past videos there, I showed you how you can alter the size of the box. And that same principle would go for the increases as well. If you were just doing a double crochet, you would do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. If you were doing like a quadruple crochet, you would chain 3 and then do your 2 quadruple crochets. But this is my next stitch marker. So this is my next increase. I'm really getting tangled in this. So that's my fourth increase. So I'm not making the blocks or the mesh any bigger. I'm just increasing the number of them around. And these stitches are big enough that I can go back and actually like count how many rows I did, so that when I do the other side of the sleeve, I can just count them. It'll be easy to count them. Whereas if you were just doing a more solid stitch, you might have to actually put stitch markers and write your counts down. Always keep a notebook. Always keep a notebook near me. I write all everything I'm doing because I never know when I'm going to, this is what everything kind of looks like, because I never know when I'm going to go, oh hey, I want to do that again, but what did I do? So anyway, I guess I didn't brush my hair good enough. It seems to all be falling out. But I guess that's one of those things that just start happening when you get a little bit older. So I'm going to finish this round here. And when I get to the first stitch, which is my first decrease, I still have one more to do before I get to that first stitch. Thank you very much for all the likes. I don't know if you can hear the noise in the background, but from all the storms, one of the neighbor's trees lost a limb, and he usually comes up during the summertime, but he has one of the local gentlemen come over and do some maintenance for him, so he must have told him he had a limb come down in his yard, so he's sitting over there with his chainsaw. Okay, so when I get to the very end, I'm going to finish it just like I would have finished the row, and I'm going to chain my 2, and I'm going to skip my 2 here. So I'm going to skip my 2 right here, and I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that. Slip stitch right into the top of that, so it kind of makes another box. So that finishes my round. Now, at this point, you can just look at it and go, do I want it like that? Because this would, do I want it fluted like that, or do I want to add a couple more stitches to make it just a little bit wider? And I think I'm going to add maybe one more set of stitches. So this time, just to get them a little bit even, instead of working my increases into my V here, which I could do, I could just put one extra stitch in each one, I guess. You know, it's just one of those things. You just kind of have to look at things and go, how do I want to do this? Or do I want to put like an extra V stitch in between each V stitch? One second. Ignore. My other phone is ringing. And it'll just keep ringing in my ear until they hang up. Sorry. My other phone was ringing. It will just ring in my ear until they hang up, and it shouldn't be ringing right now. It's my work phone. Yeah, decisions. So I think, just kind of look at it, and to be honest with you, I think I want to put my I think I want to do another set of V stitches, maybe in the centers of where the V stitches were. So this one, so I'm going to start here with this V stitch. So in between this V stitch and this V stitch, I have 3 straight treble crochets. So I'm going to take the middle one and mark that, and that's where I'll do my next V stitch. And then in between this V stitch and this V stitch, I have 4. What do I have in between this one? 3, 4. So if I increase by 4, 19, 1, 22, 23, I still have an odd number of stitches. So I'm just going to take it and just pick one of these 2 middle stitches, and just, that's where my increase is going to be. And then in between this one, I have 3, which means in between the next one, I should have 4. And I put that in. So in between this one and this one, I have 4, I have 5. Oh well, I'll put it in the middle one there in the 5 one. You can see how you can just kind of make it up as you go along. And you know, if you look where I have those stitch markers, they're pretty much even around. So as long as they're pretty much even around, it doesn't matter if they're perfectly even around. And I have a feeling, yikes, was that I am home today. My mother. My mother can wait a few more minutes. Just a few. She's not usually, would say Thursday? She usually works on Thursdays. But she wants to gossip. That's, you know, I don't mind answering the phone, and I usually do. But if she just wants to gossip, she can wait a few minutes. Okay, so anyway, I have my stitch markers pretty much even all the way around where I want to put my second set of increases. So I'm going to start my round like I usually do with my chain 4, my chain 2, because I've got my chain 4, my chain 2, and then I'm going to work my treble in that stitch there. So that gives me the first block over top of the increase, and it just looks like a normal regular block. That's why as long as they're sort of in the right place, you'll be okay. So then I'm just going to work to the next stitch marker with my chain 2 and my treble, and my chain 2, and my next stitch is a stitch that I've marked. And when I go back and do the other side, like I said, it'll be easy to look to see where I put these increases, because the stitches are giant and I can just kind of go back and try to mimic it the best I can for the other sleeve. If it were any more detailed than this, I would have to write it down, but because those stitches are so big, you can see that if I took where that block is, I could actually count those blocks up. So I would know how many blocks I did before I started my increases, and because the blocks are so big, counting around, I can see exactly where I started my increases and stopped my increases. When do you change to chain 2? In between. So this mesh stitch is chain 2, and then treble into my treble. And now the next one is an increase, but I'm going to work it like a block. So I will treble, so I will chain 2, I will treble in this treble, chain 2, treble in this treble, chain 2, treble in this treble. Well, I'm chaining 2 and skipping the chain 2, if that wasn't clear. So I'm going to chain 2, skip 2, treble in my treble, chain 2, skip 2, treble in my treble, chain 2, skip 2, treble in my treble, chain 2, skip 2, and this is my increase stitch. So since I'm going to increase, I'm going to do it just like I would a block. I'm going to treble, chain 2, and instead of skipping 2, I'm going to treble again in there like I would a V-stitch. So my chain 2 is always in between my treble stitches to give me a block. How's your day going? Oh, my day's going good. You are Liz. Did I get that right? Cindy, did that explain it a little bit more? I like it when I get it right. Cindy, did that explain it a little bit more? Where the chain 2s go? Kind of. Okay. So you want to know where the chain 2s go when I'm doing the increases, or where the chain 2s go just in general? and honestly it doesn't really matter with this because just in general, in between every single treble you're going to chain 2 and skip 2. So if you've got a treble here, you've chained 2, skip 2. A treble here, you're going to chain 2, skip 2. Because this is an increase, you're going to treble here and chain 2, but instead of skipping your 2, you're just going to put this treble in the same one. So after every treble, you're going to then chain 2, and then do another treble. So just like down here, this is all treble, chain 2, skip 2, another treble, chain 2, skip 2, and my increase stitch would just be another treble, chain 2, and treble in the same treble to make the increase. So after every treble crochet, I am doing a chain 2 to compensate for the height so that it looks square. Was that a little bit better? Because I want to make it so that like you can really understand it. Was that better? Did that help a little bit more? Yes? Okay. If not, let me know because I'll figure out a different way. But in between every single treble stitch, I'm going to do a chain 2. So I'm going to treble in every treble, and I'm going to chain 2 over every chain 2. So like that's a chain 2, I'm going to chain over top of it, and then I treble in my next treble. And then I'm going to chain 2 over top of the next chain 2, and then I'm going to treble in that treble. And now this is my marked stitch for my increase. So when I increase my stitches, I'm still going to chain 2 and put my first treble in there. But then again, after that treble, I'm still going to chain 2. I'm just going to put another treble in that treble. But you chain 2 to compensate for the height of the treble so that when you do the following row, you actually have the block over top of your where you made the increase in your V-stitch. So I'm going to finish this round here. So this is where I increased on the previous round. And I'm just going to work it like a normal block, like I'm going to chain 2, skip 2, and treble in that treble. Chain 2, skip 2, and treble in that treble. And you see that gives me a block over the just a regular block over the increased stitch. Which is kind of why I decided to alternate the increases, because that way they all wouldn't be in the same place, so they wouldn't be as noticeable. So again, I'm just going to chain 2. Yeah, if anybody has questions and wants me to explain anything again, just jump in and let me know, because what's the point of me sitting here if I can't help you understand it? Because that's kind of the whole point of me sitting here, to show you how like pretty much can hold your yarn and hold your hook, and you can know how to pull it through. You can pretty much do any of these stitches. They're really easy, and that's one of the reasons why I take a whole week to do a tutorial. That way I can take my time to explain it. This was the one I just took the stitch marker out of so I can do another increase. So I'm going to chain 2 before I do my next treble. So I'm just always going to chain 2 in between my trebles. And I'm going to chain 2, and since I want that to be an increase, I'm just going to put that treble right in that same stitch. And that'll make that V stitch so that it gets to be a little bit bigger. Thank you very much. Mocha Mom, who just joined, thank you for joining. So let's see, am I almost done with this round, or do I have one more? So again, when I get to the increase from the previous round, I'm just going to work it like a regular box. My chain 2, skip my chain 2, and work my treble into my treble. Chain 2, I have one more increase to make. Chain 2, treble on my treble, chain 2, treble on my next treble, chain 2, and that one looks like that's going to be an increase. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to do my treble, chain 2, and one more treble in the same stitch to increase that there. And then I'm going to just continue to the very end here. And then I'm going to try it on and see if I like it. So I'll show you. So I'm at the very end where I did my chain 4 for my first stitch, and then my chain 2 for my chain 2. So chain 4 gives you the height for the treble. For the first treble, you count that as your first stitch. So you count your chain 4 as your first stitch, and then you chain 2 more, that counts as your chain 2, and then you do your treble in your next stitch. So that's the round there. So I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to skip these 2. Skip these 2. It's kind of hard to see. And then the top of the chain 4 that I did for the height, I'm going to not do that. I'm going to just slip stitch. So I finished a second round of, I like that a little bit better. I finished a second round of fluting, or just flaring. And I can do one of two things when I do the flares. Like if this isn't long enough, I'm going to take out that last round that I just did, and I'm just going to do one round around without increases, and then I'll do another, so I'll alternate my increasing rounds just so it doesn't, so I can get a little bit more length on it without making it too wide. Does that make sense? I don't know, but that's kind of like the look I was going for. And if I've got the center, where's my center, where my safety pin is, I think I might want that to be just a little bit longer. So I think I am going to do that. I'm going to rip out that row, and I know this it's going to make me crazy. So it's just, I mean, you can see that and again, I don't mind frogging things because I want to change my design concept. Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind ripping things out because I want to change my design concept a little bit. I mind ripping things out when I make stupid mistakes that, like, I should have been counting, and it's just this yarn. Oh my god. Alright, so let me see where I am with this fuzzy piece. And again, since it's mine, I don't really care. I'm just cutting the fuzzies so that I can get the yarn apart. And you can actually do that pretty easily without damaging the yarn. This is the next spot that it wants to, and it won't take me long to go around this once. And then I'll just remark where I want my stitches to be, or my increases to be. It's just, oh my god. It's like, I don't know if some of you ladies remember, it was a yarn called Dazzle Air. And it was an acrylic yarn. I don't know if you've been crocheting that long, if you remember that, but it was sort of like the sparkly yarns are today. And it was like one of the only sparkly yarns you could really find at that particular time, in that particular decade. And it was called Dazzle Air. And I still remember that because my mother bought it for something and I picked it up to use it and thought to myself, oh my god, this is so fuzzy, it just gets everywhere. Alright, so now I ripped it out. It only took me a few minutes. I ripped it out so that I could do just one row of regular blocks, and then I'll do another row of increase and another row of regular blocks. So maybe about 15 more minutes here and I'll wrap it up. So I've got my chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got my chain 2 because my chain 4 counts as my first treble, and then my chain 2 and skip 2 and treble in my treble, and that's what I'm going to do all the way around. I'll do this quick because you guys have been watching me do this now for 3 days. Chain 2, skip 2, treble in the treble. Are you tired of hearing that? I'm sure. I can hear all the chainsaws. I figured I would have heard them all yesterday. From all the storms that we had, we have trees all over the place. And if they're in the road, the county will come and push them off to the side of the road, like around the ditches. I live in one of those areas. Like almost like push it back onto their property. And then after the storms, you hear all the chainsaws. I really kind of thought everybody would have had all their trees cleaned up by now, since it's been a couple of weeks. Everybody but me, we purposefully had a tree cut down, and we kind of barter with the guy that cuts our trees down. So my husband goes out and helps him cut the tree down, and typically I would go out and help do cleanup as well. And the guy sells the wood, so he takes the majority of the wood and he'll sell the wood, and he'll sell the chips after he chips it. So because I have a lot of trees that need cut down and they're giant, so I still have half a giant tree sitting in my yard. I don't really care. It can sit there half the summer. Eventually we'll chip away at it, and eventually when it's gone, the guy will show up and say, hey, I need some more wood, can I cut down another tree? And we already told him, like, there's 1, 2, 3, 5 more trees out there that need cut down. They're just way too close to my house. I'm just working on even around here and chattering while I do it. They're just way too close to my house, and they scare me, especially when you get the windy storms and you see all the trees that are uprooted all around me. They're just too close. So they really need to go. Okay, so I'm almost done with this round. And one more to go. So I get to the end, I'm going to chain 2 at the top of my chain 4, because my chain 4 was my chain 4 counts as my first stitch. So at the top of that chain 4, I'm just going to slip stitch in it, chain 4 again, and now I need to figure out where I want my increases to be. Since I folded it that way the last time, this way the last time, I'm going to fold it this way this time. So it's kind of going to be the same way I just showed you. So if this is where my increases are on the round before, you can see the V stitches. I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle of those V stitches. So somewhere in the middle of those V stitches would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3 would be in the middle. So I'll mark my chain there. And that's just kind of to stagger them so they don't all look like they're in the same spot. There's my 2 V stitches from the previous row, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one ends up being chain 2. So I'm going to do it in either the first or second, as long as you do it in a pattern. So I'll do it in the second one. So this one is my chain 2, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would put it in the third stitch, and that would be even. This one and this one, I have, because that's still an increase, I have 1, 2, 3. Is that right? So I guess that's the middle one there. That's where I'm going to do that increase. So again, I have it like marked for pretty much even. Yeah, that's why it's nice that we can, up here it's a little bit different. It's it's very country up here. So like bartering for things like that, people are usually happy to barter for things like that, which is odd to hear in like such a modern day, but yeah, people are usually happy to barter things for things. So he likes to cut down trees, and he has all the equipment and things like that. I am making a bolero, or a shrug. This is the third tutorial working on this. The first 2 worked on how to start it and how to measure it. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. It was just when I started moving up here that I realized that people up here were willing to barter for things, so it was nice. And a bolero is like, it's a shrug would be another name for it, and it's basically just a long scarf that has the ends of it stitched up like sleeves. So this goes across your back, and across your back, and then you stitch up the sleeves. And I wanted to make my sleeves a little bit fluted and flared, so that's what I'm working on today. But if you go to the link in my bio, you can find my YouTube channel. In the mornings when I do these tutorials and try to do some teaching, I upload them to YouTube, so you can always go back to what I'm doing today in this past hour and follow through it. 4 for my height, 2 for my chain 2. So I'm making a couple more rows. Am I doing? Yeah, I did 1 row of increases, 1 row of just the regular boxes or mesh. I'm going to do 1 more row of increases. So my increases would be, again, I'm chaining 2 after every treble crochet, and these are American terms for those of you that are just jumping in. So this is my marked stitch for my increase. So I'm going to do my treble and my chain 2, and to increase instead of going to the next stitch, I'm going to put another treble right in that one. And you can see from the increases from below, right here, that when you work your treble chain 2 over top of it, it just makes another square over top of it, which makes it a little bit. Oh, you are fantastic. Thank you so much, Cindy. I do love you guys. I love it when you guys join me. That's why I want to make sure you guys like get what I'm telling you. So if like you're not understanding something, please jump in and let me know. But yes, if you go to my bio, there is I have a link tree, and one of the links in that is right to my YouTube channel. And then you can just pull up these crazy, silly, ridiculously chattered tutorials that I do, and you can skip through and watch just the parts you want to watch, or the parts that you may have missed. So I'm going to work this round until I get to my next marked stitch. Which is the next stitch. That's my marked stitch. For those of you that are new, I use, okay, so the yarn that I'm using, give me 1 second just to do this increase, because if I don't, I'll forget what I was doing and forget to put the increase there. So to do the increase is just like a V-stitch. The yarn I'm using is a mess. I'm just kidding. It is a mess, but it is very pretty. It's Lion Brand Landscapes. Lion Brand Landscapes. And the colorway is, I know you're reading it backwards. That's why I'm leaving it up here for a while. Boardwalk Promenade. So it's Lion Brand Landscapes. And it's Boardwalk Promenade. Where is it? There it is. And it's really fuzzy. Really clingy. But I thought it would make a pretty bolero, a pretty shrug for the summer. I wear my tank tops, and in the evenings I would have something to throw over my shoulders. There wasn't a shawl, which I actually do have a few that I've kept for myself. Thank you very much. This is my mornings. I jump on and I try to teach something, and basically what I teach is something that I'm freehanding. So you get to see kind of like my thought process, and how what I did was actually just like simple stitches that you've probably already done. But I chatter away through my thought process so you can see how I put them together, so that I mean, you can just kind of make things your own. And this was a good example, because this is something that even if you have a pattern, even if the pattern says small, medium, or large, you can get a better fit if you just kind of like measure it yourself, which I do go over in the first video, and I'll do here again in a second. Get my increase here. But to start this bolero, or this shrug, which is basically a scarf with the ends sewn up like sleeves, you would measure around the fattest part of your arm. So you would take your scarf and you would measure around the fattest part of your arm, because you eventually want to sew it up like a sleeve. Here's my end here. Here's my end. And that's what you would chain to start your scarf. And then you would just work down it like a scarf until you got to the point where you wanted your sleeves to start. And then you would start your sleeves. So in those earlier tutorials that I did this week, I went through like the measurements and where to start, and how the different stitches might affect it, where you wanted to start and how you wanted to do it, whether or not you want to work in the round, or you want to work just the whole scarf and then sew up the sleeves. So all those kind of quirky thoughts that go through my brain while I'm actually sitting and doing this, I sit and chatter about to try to teach, because it really isn't, you know, you see all these like people are making these gorgeous gowns and things like that, and they're really all just the same basic stitches. It's just they're putting them together in a different way that makes it look different or unique. A good example of that is a shell stitch. You know, they call it a shell stitch, but essentially your shell stitch is just an increasing stitch. It's just 5 double crochet in one stitch, and then you just bring it over and you close it, and then you skip some stitches and you go to the next stitch and you do 5 double crochet. So essentially with somebody's fancy name, for example, the shell stitch, thank you. The shell stitch is just basically double crochets, and it's basically an increase in skipping stitches. So when you put that all together and you think about it like that, that it's all just basically holding your yarn and knowing how to use your yarn and your hook, it's pretty amazing what your brain can come up with at that point. It really is. Alright, so this is my last row of, I know I'm chattering like longer than I usually do. I'm waiting for TikTok to come on and say, you've been on. Is it time to take a break? It does that if any of you guys have ever gone live for a while. TikTok will show up in my comments. It says, do you need to take a break? Like, no, I'm not done running my mouth. Just kidding. Anyway, okay, so I got the second set of increases there. So if you can see, I did a row with the V stitches to increase, so I did 4 of those evenly around, and then I did just a solid row, and then I did just one more row with my increases, and I'm going to do one more solid row around. And I don't know how much yarn of this is left because I don't know what skein is what here. It came out of the box like this. I don't know if the postman like was tossing it around or whatever, but it just came a mess. It was like all unraveled and looks worse than anything I've ever done on my yarn, and I've done some pretty outrageous things. This yarn isn't bad, and I don't mind working with it. It was just the tearing out the pieces that I needed to tear out of. So I'm hoping, I probably don't have enough to do this entire round here with this. But I'm going to try. And if not, I'll just join it. So to start my blocks and my mesh, I'm going to chain 4 to give myself the height for my trebles, and then I'm going to chain 2, which would be my 2 that I skip, and then I'm going to treble in the next treble. And then I'm just going to work that way across and just do my plain mesh without any increases this time. So chain 2, skip my chain 2 underneath, and just treble in the treble. In the same way, when I get to my increases, I'm going to chain 2 over my chain 2, and I'm going to treble in the next treble. And that gives me a block over the increase. You can see where the increase is there. It looks like a V stitch, but then it gives me a block on top of that. And then I would just keep going around until I get this round done. I'm probably not going to make it. I know I'm losing this game of yarn chicken. Okay, let's see what I got here. I have a third skein. And out of the third skein, what is coming out of the third skein? Is this the blue? I'm not kidding. This is how it was like this when I opened the box. So when my sister sent it, I don't know if they tossed it around in the truck or what. That actually looks like they tried to join that. That doesn't look like a knot to me, but it looks like they tried to join the 2 colors there. Oh man. I didn't realize this skein looked like this. Alright, give me a second here. That looks like that's the end. Somewhere? No, it's a big long loop from the outside and the inside. How does that happen? I don't know if you can see this, but I've got this coming from the outside and this coming from the inside. And it is literally just a big long loop. The heck? Okay. What's in the middle here? Anything? Anything I can pull out? Sorry, this isn't how I wanted the last little bit of this to go. I'm just going to yank. Now the loop's coming out through. This is not right. You guys ever get a skein of yarn that you're trying to do this with and you're just like, this is not right. It's not right. I'm like, what do I do? Shove it back down in there? I'm going to do that. I'm going to find the, there's the end. All right. Now I'm working with something. I'm just going to toss it all back in there. Work with it. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so I know it's kind of going to be two different colors, but I'm not really going to worry about it because it's colorful to begin with. So if I want to join my yarns, and I'm going to show you how I join my yarns, I can either finish this off. So I could take this from here and do a chain 2 and pull my tail through and pull my knot down to end it with this, and then just reattach my yarn here to start. Or this is what I like to do. I found that this works very well, and it's a little bit funky of a join, but I'm going to show you. So I'm going to pull out that stitch so I get a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to show you. To join your yarn this way, you want your tails facing in opposite directions. And this is a lot easier than people make it out to be. You're going to want your tails facing in opposite directions. You're going to use this tail to tie to this part. You're going to use this tail to tie to this part. And you're going to do a simple overhand knot, and you're just going to make sure the tail is still pointing upwards. So when you tie this yarn to this side, you're going to do your overhand knot. You'll see it here in a second. So that the tail, this is my tail that's pointing downwards, so that my tail is still pointing upwards. Can you see how I just did like one simple overhand knot, but the tail is still pointing upwards? And I'm just going to pull that tight like that. And then I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to take now this one and tie it to this one the same way. I'm just going to do a simple overhand knot, but I'm going to make sure when I do the knot, the tail comes up through, so the tail is pointing in the same direction. It's pointing up. So you just take this one and you would just do your basic overhand knot so that the tail is facing up. So now you have a piece of your yarn where your purple is coming down, and you can see the tail of the purple is coming down. The orange is going up, and the tail of your orange is going up. So you can give those a tug, and you can make them pretty tight. So then what you're going to do is you're just going to take your knot. I think it's called trucker's hitch, but I'm not 100% sure. I think I've seen my son do something similar to tie down his kayaks. But then you're going to take that, and you're going to slide it. Now, because your tails are pointing in these directions, every time you pull these two sides here, yeah, that's the whole thing is about where your tails are. Your tails have to be pointing, like if your purple's coming from this side, your tail still has to be pointing this way. If you're tying your orange on, the tail still has to be pointing in the same direction that the yarn was going, so that when you then pull that down, and I'm a little neurotic, so you'll have to excuse my glue here. Those of you that have been following me know that I'm like a glue fanatic. And you don't have to do this. You do not have to glue this knot, but I glue everything. Hold on one second here. I lost the cap to my glue. Oh, there, it'll work. Okay, so I usually take it, and you can see that there's like a space in between it. You don't have to, trust me. I've tried to yank these out. I just take a little bit, the tiniest little bit of glue. It actually almost doesn't even look like there's any glue on it. And then when you pull these together, just the motion of pulling them this way tightens the knot. So no matter how hard you pull this, you will snap the string before you break that knot. You just have to remember to tie it in that way that your tails, and it's just one overhand knot from each one, that the tails are coming in those same directions like that. Thanks. But yeah, no matter how hard, this is only going to tighten as you pull it. It's not going to loosen up. So essentially, but you know, I just do the glue because I'm like glue crazy. So you can take this and you can actually come down as far as you want, as long as you're not snipping the knot part. Get to focus. As long as you're not snipping the knot part. And you can snip that absolutely as close as you want. So they're snipped. Oh, so fuzzy. So you can see how close I snipped those. And still, even though I snipped them, I was just going to say, you'll break the yarn before you break the knot. Yep, that's how I do it. But you will. You will break the yarn, literally, before you break that knot. So for those of you that really wanted to see it again, sorry about that. Grand Mazo, Grandma Ziu, I'm not sure what your name is, but yeah, this is how I join it all the time, and I don't care that it's two different colors. But you can see my point. You'll break the yarn before you break that knot. Okay, so I might as well show you one more time since I broke my yarn. Honestly, I didn't mean to do that. I really did not mean to break that yarn. It just snapped in my hands, and I thought, oh my god, I did all that work. So no, that was not intentional. Okay, so same thing. You're just going to take this one, and you're just going to make sure your tail is going in the opposite direction, and you are going to make sure that when you tie that overhand knot, your tail is still pointing in the same direction. So I'm going to, like, if I can hear, I'll hold this. Take this and tie my overhand knot. So that the tail is still pointing upwards. And then I'm going to flip it over. And I know this is like such a professional to know my own strength. It's got to be like, the yarn can't be that strong then. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so like I said, the professional way to do it, I'll get the fuzz out of my mouth here in a second. This is just a project I'm making for myself, so I'm not real worried about it. So the second knot you want to make is with the second tail, and since the second tail is pointing up, when you make the overhand knot, you want to make sure the tail is still pointing up. So you want to take it around. It's a little bit short. And you want to tie your overhand knot. So that the tail is still pointing up. So then you see the string is just still going this way, and this string is still going this way. And then when you pull them, now I have a mouthful of fuzz. I'm not going to pull them that hard again. But that was just a good example. That was actually a good example of how you will break, and you can again cut that as close as you want to cut it. And that's not coming apart. I have so expertly demonstrated. Okay. And I'm just going to work over top of that and not really care. I literally have a mouthful of fuzz now. So I'm going to keep going around this. And you can see that knot will just kind of like pull itself and hide itself. So, and luckily it's on the inside of my, but because the two yarns are kind of twined together, like you really just can't even tell. And I think when I'm done with this, I think I'm going to call it a morning. And then I'll show you decorative edges tomorrow because I want to finish the second sleeve. And then I can show you how I would do a decorative edge around the bottom of my sleeves that I fluted, and how I would adapt that decorative edge to go around the back part of it. So the little bits that you see here from the scarf, and I'll show you in a minute, will kind of match the end of the sleeves. And I'm just, again, going around with my treble, chain 2, skip my chain 2, treble in the next treble, chain 2, skip my chain 2, treble in the next treble, and go around here, and then I'll try it back on, and I'll show you how the sleeve looks at the end. Thank you for everybody that's joining me. I am almost done, but you can go to my bio and you can click on the link tree, and you can find my YouTube channels. In the morning after I do these tutorials, I upload them to YouTube. Usually by late afternoon I get them uploaded by maybe 3 or so. And you can follow along. This week I took the entire week to go through this Bolero, which is like a shrug. And as soon as I finish a couple more stitches here, I'll try it on and I'll show you kind of what it looks like. To do this, I used obviously that one entire skein to go from the center to the end. So I have another skein that's going to go from the center. You can see I have it attached already. From the center to the end. I am Eastern United States. Oh, anytime. I'm going to sit here and be my crazy self. Are you kidding me? I love it. And it makes me like so happy. Like, you guys really make my day when you tell me that it's helpful. You make my day when you sit here and chatter with me in the evenings too. Okay, so this is the end of this row, and I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of my chain 4 and put a stitch marker on here so that I don't, one of my fancy stitch markers. This is like my favorite when I'm crocheting. When I'm knitting, I'll use just a regular round stitch marker, but when I crochet, I think I might need to put a pin in that. Might need to be a little bit bigger so it doesn't go through the mesh. Okay, so again, Bolero, this is part 3. Part 4 will be tomorrow. You'll learn. Thank you, Cindy. You like make me happy. You're like, you and Janie just you and Janie are like my big fangirls. I love you guys. But yeah, Eastern United States. So right here, right now, it's 11:33 a.m. So when you put this scarf on with your sleeves tied up, or with your sleeve stitched up, and that's kind of how I wanted my sleeve to look. I wanted it to come down to about my wrist, not much further, because I really didn't want it to hang over my hand, and I wanted to flare out like that. So you can see all I did those, what is easier, crocheting or knitting? Um, I would say both about the same, in my opinion. Um, I learned to crochet when I was like really little. I taught myself how to knit somewhere in my 30s. And I like to do both equally. Um, if you want to keep going in the fiber arts, tatting is a little bit more difficult, um, just because it's thread and it's finicky. Um, oh, thank you, Blue Ridge Bunny. I don't think I know your name, Blue Ridge Bunny. Yeah, my YouTube channel, like these, everything that I teach in the morning, I then upload, and then in the evenings, I usually jump on and just chatter with everybody. Crochet has one hook. Yeah, crochet has one hook. Knitting has two needles. I guess it just depends on what's more comfortable to you. Like I used to knit with like the throwing method when I first taught myself how to do it, and then that just wasn't fast enough for me. You can tell by the way I talk. It just wasn't fast enough for me. So I actually taught myself how to, when you see them knitting, they're actually holding their yarn like they would when they crochet and they pull their stitches up. So I did teach myself how to do that. I'm crazy like that, but okay. It's been almost 2 hours, I think. I'm Kinsey. Oh, thank you so much. You know what? That's how you start out. It really, truly is. Um, and you learn. And you learn that it really pretty much is all basic stitches. I'm just reading comments here. I know I have to look at them through my bifocals. Sorry. Um, yeah, but YouTube. But tomorrow I'm going to show you how you would work a decorative stitch around here, and you could do the same decorative stitch around here. So it kind of ties it together. So you see where that gap is there. It'll just kind of like pull together. So it'll have like that nice edge to it. I think that's what we're going to do. Um, oh, you have a great day too. All of you guys have a great day. But yeah, this is it so far. My flute is asleep, and maybe I'll see you guys on here later. I usually jump back on in the afternoon to crochet some more, and jump back on in the evening to crochet some more, do some gardening somewhere in the middle. I work overnight, so if I don't get to sleep, I take a nap. This will be uploaded to YouTube, usually around 3 or 4. It does take some time to process the videos, especially since this one was a little bit longer. TikTok will usually take about an hour before it's ready to upload. So, yeah. If you like the tutorials, go to my YouTube page. If you like just sitting around chattering, come look for me and join me in the afternoons and the evenings. And I love my fangirls. Janie, Cindy, Claudia. I'm like, you guys make me so happy. Liz, I think, is another one. Yeah, I hope to catch you too later, Janie. Oh, trust me, I have a list of you guys that are like like the kids call them, my OGs. We'll just sit here and just keep chattering away. I will talk to you guys later.